And we're so privileged to have today one of the national presidents. Well, we got two national presidents. But I'd just like to recognize Alice Davis. Could you raise your hand, Alice? She told me I'm 101 years old. And the auxiliary has been really what's kept us in this life. Christine, did you have something you want to, is Reverend Barry Reynolds still here? Could you come forward, Reverend Barry? Our auxiliary, again, she's also both the national president as well as a member of the wellness ministry from Mount Zion Baptist. Zion Baptist, right? Right. But our auxiliary is a small stuff. This is the down page. Big stuff coming. But this is on behalf of mankind, our auxiliary. Did you want to say a word?
Thank you, Dr. Beckett. And I'd like to say a word of thanks to Dr. Beckett for all of his work to plan this event for us. We're so appreciative. And we have our Region 2 conference that is in town this weekend. And Dr. Beckett is he's the chaplain of our local organization, Mid-Con. He's also the vice chair, vice speaker for the National Medical Association. We'll give him applause. Thank you so much, Dr. Beckett. I give a small donation on behalf of my husband, Dr. Melvin Williams, and myself, Christine, and I do represent the National Medical, the auxiliary to the National Medical Association and our local Mid-Con. Thank you very much. Thank you all for having us today.
Thank you. Again, at this time, I'll ask Diane Kern. At this time, yeah.
Where's Jimmy? He needs to document this and show it back to the whole congregation. What we have to do. This is terrible.
Yeah.
Where's Jimmy?
Let's introduce the member of the Lord who Diane Kern, who will be the moderator. Now, we have a little change program. We'll introduce the panel first on the office and presentation. Dr. Kern, thank you.
Thank you. And welcome everybody. We're delighted to have you this afternoon, and we're very proud to partner with MedCon and with the National Medical Association on this program, and especially with our book author, Dr. Paula Duren. Thank you very much. This is a very important and critical issue. I'm sure if you have not been affected directly, you all know of people who have been caregivers or who are caregivers of people with dementia. And dementia is such a devastating disease and disorder. So it is of vital importance that we understand the impact, understand the nature of it, understand what it means to be in a caregiving role. So we're especially appreciative of you, Dr. Kern, for being such a pioneer in this arena and providing vital information to people. So we will be talking about that. And let me ask you, Dr. Kern, do you want to do your presentation before the panel or as part of the panel?
I think, first of all, thank you for the invitation. I'm Diane, before or after? They're trying to get the technology together.
Okay.
But, and I can join your panel if you want me to.
That would be fantastic. So let us welcome Dr. Paula Duren, who also looked at the major point of our presentation. And Dr. Duren, would you, what I'm tasked with making sure that everybody gets introduced on our panel. We have a wonderful panel in addition to Dr. Paula Duren. And so I will allow them each to introduce themselves, to tell you about their professional affiliations, and briefly about their experience. So each of you will have limited 2 minutes. Okay. In addition to Dr. Paula Duren, our book author, we have Dr. Weir, we also have Dr. Lawson, Dr. Bill Lawson, and we also have Ms. Robin Barlow. So I'm going to let each and every one of them introduce themselves individually, because we have a spectrum of expertise up here, ranging from psychiatrists to neurologists to a plant-based nutritionist expert. I'm a psychologist as well, and so as a moderator, and so was Dr. Paula Duren. So we want to talk about the whole range of this, not only the physical implications of dementia and what that means for us as possible caregivers, as friends and family members of caregivers, and as friends and family members of those who have the disorder, as well as the mental and emotional impact of this. So I'm going to start off with Dr. Duren. Would you just tell us a little bit about your professional background, please?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Paula Duren, and I'm from Detroit. And I am a psychologist by training, but I am a caregiver by work, by heart. I taught college for a while. I went into corporate and I started an executive coaching business and consulted with organizations and spent most of my time there doing training, executive coaching, leadership development work. And then my parents became ill. And then this is my new journey. And I think that each of us is given a journey, and my journey at this point is ensuring that caregivers are prepared to support those that are living with dementia diseases, and they take care of themselves.
Wonderful. Thank you. Let's welcome Dr. Weir.
I'm Dr. Roger Weir. I'm a neurologist. Happy Palm Sunday to everybody here. My role is really to say something about the neurology of Alzheimer's and some of the other illnesses. And one of the clear things is caregiving is a major entity. Alzheimer's might produce large numbers of the people with the problem, but there's a big similarity between caregiving, where Alzheimer's is the problem, other dementias are the problem, and even non-dementing illnesses are the problem. I'm getting off into my talk, but anyhow, I am I'm from Nassau, Bahamas. I did my early schooling there. I went to London, where I trained at St. Bartholomew's Hospital at London University. I came to the USA. I did actually a year in a psychiatry residency at Harlem Hospital. I then did 3 years in specific neurology training at Kings County Downstate Medical Center. And I came to Howard University initially as an instructor and initially working part-time in a laboratory at the NINH in Bethesda. I basically went on to become board certified in neurology, become a full-time instructor, assistant professor, associate professor, and later chairman of the Department of Neurology. I have seen patients, ordinary people, friends, but also patients with disabilities of many etiologies, and we have really spoken often on Alzheimer's and other illnesses. Thank you.
Thank you. And welcome, Dr. Weir.
I am Weir-Board. I see a lot of familiar faces and always glad back to be in the area, originally from Virginia, did all my, went to Howard University, did my original training, and then actually started out in a career in psychology, and was in psychology for a long while, actively involved in animal research, and then decided to go to medical school, and went to the University of Chicago, then went to NINH, became actively involved in terms of research and have been actively involved in various areas of neuropsychiatry for the past several decades, including serving as head as VA hospitals, state directors of mental health for several states, as well as the chair of psychiatry for several decades at Howard University and becoming an associate dean at the University of Texas Dell Medical School, where we helped to start the medical school itself. My experience with Alzheimer's goes back to when we did some of the original studies comparing Alzheimer's in terms of Nigeria to Alzheimer's in terms of the United States, and looking at some of the different biological mechanisms, appreciating the differences in terms of how the community addressed these various kinds of problems. And then recently, in dealing with dementia, and was fortunate enough to work with Dr. Walter Forget in terms of a research project in which we're screening the community and developing some interventions to deal with early onset impaired dementia.
Thank you. Let us welcome Dr. Lawson.
My name is Robin Navarro, and I'm certified in plant-based nutrition. Now, I have to thank Dr. Forget for inviting me to be on this esteemed panel. I'm going to be more layperson, but I do have a lot of experience working with plant-based foods that help reduce the risk of chronic disease. And as some people may know, though it's not official that Alzheimer is, I would say, type 3 diabetes, but it does get bandied around because there are similarities between what goes on with diabetes 1 and 2 and with what occurs in our brain with the plaques that are there. And so, what else can I tell you? I will just say I teach classes right now at the African American Health Program in Montgomery County, and we cover topics such as diabetes, heart disease, cancer, weight loss or weight control, and just kickstarting your health. And so I like seeing that people are improving their biometrics by the way they eat and move, and so that's why I'm here.
Welcome to our panel again. And again, I'm Diana Kern. I'm a psychologist with the psychotherapy practice here. I also have a wellness practice, Happy and Healthy You, in which I promote stress management and healthy living. That's about prevention and maintaining our well-being. And I'd be remiss if I did not allow, first of all, I'd like to also thank Dr. Paula Duren, who is one of our wellness ministry members here, as the point person for organizing this program, as well as Robin. I don't know if she says she's also one of our wellness ministry members. And I would definitely be remiss if I did not acknowledge Dr. Esther Pender, who is the president, chairperson for the wellness ministry. Okay. Okay. Okay, so at this time, we will hear from Dr. Paula Duren, who will do a presentation on her book, The Front Porch. That will be followed by a panel discussion with each of the experts here giving a brief presentation to about their specific expertise with relation to dementia. And keep in mind, dementia is the broader term. Alzheimer's is just one type of dementia. I know that's going to be one of my questions right there, is what is the differentiation? And please feel free to ask questions. I'm not, Dr. Duren, did you want to hold questions off until after your presentation?
No, I'll after.
Okay, so we will hold the questions until after the presentations. And at this time, Dr. Duren, we are looking for, I'm going to give you the microphone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone, and I hear that some of you have been here since 9 o'clock this morning. Let me thank you, first of all, for staying and being present. We have a short video, and then I'm gonna go through this fairly quick, because I think that I'm impressed with the talent that you have in-house, and we're just gonna see how we're gonna work this thing together. So Diane, you wanna start the video, please? Can you hear it?
Ready?
My name is Dr. Paula Duren. I am the
Where's it coming from? Oh, let's try this one. Let's try this one.
No, that's not.
That's not gonna work.
for a group called Universal Dementia Caregivers. And I wanted to introduce you to my mom and dad. Mom and dad both had dementia. Start with the slides. Let's honor them. All right. How many of you have ever done a presentation and your technology did not work? I want you to know, you initially panic inside and you're trying to pretend like you're not panicking. Yeah. But let's move forward. I want to honor the gifts in the room, and we will share information and challenges.
It's okay. We can just keep.
Thank you so much. That way I don't rain.
Right.
It's okay. She's gonna just keep going.
I have the gift of have just finished the book on the front porch. On the front porch is something very important to me. The title is On the Front Porch because how many of you remember a lot of lessons being learned on the front porch? Where you shared knowledge, you lied a little, you just did the things you needed to do, and you were together as a family. And that's what this whole thing means to me. This whole conversation is about family to me. I'd switch it, Diane. I am trying to build a community of support around caregivers. Because did you know that sometimes caregivers die 30% of the time before the ones they self-supported? Because they're not taking care of themselves. So because they're not taking care of themselves, some of the gifts and talents that they have to bring to this process aren't working. I want you to know that I had the privilege of taking care of my mother and father. My mother had Alzheimer's, my father had vascular, and they overlapped. Now, if anybody's taking care of someone, period, one person is a lot. And you want to not just do it from that frame, you want to make sure they care. I believe that the loved one is still inside when it comes to dementia, and we need to honor and respect them in every way we can. I was running a management consulting business, and we were doing really well. Just God had blessed us to have a number of corporate clients. We did training, we did executive coaching, leadership, doing all the stuff. And then I got a call from a storekeeper. And if you know anything about Detroit, Novi is about an hour from the city. My mother had gotten lost in Novi at the mall. And I received this call from this gentleman who says, your mother's really confused. She's crying and she's upset. He said, you need to come and get her. I first said, thank you, Lord, for putting her in the hands of a kind storekeeper. Because she could have been placed in the hands of anybody. And I went to get her, and she saw me. She was so excited to see me, but she was just distressed. You know how you wake up in the middle of the night and you just kind of panic? Just imagine that experience for an extended period of time. Well, we got her home, and we realized that something was wrong, and we needed to start paying closer attention. Less than 3 months later, I got a call that my father had in a car accident. He didn't get hurt, thank God. He didn't get hurt. But what happened is that we learned that he had been taking dementia medication for 2 years and hadn't told anyone. Because of the pride, because of the shame, because of the stereotypes. Because you know, right now, even today, a lot of people in our community think dementia is a mental illness. Even though we're getting better at dealing with mental illnesses, a lot of people still hide mental illnesses. How many of you had a family where you said your business stay at home? You don't take your stuff out in the streets, your stuff stays right in the house. And so I was working, and I said, now am I going to be able to continue my work in terms of the consulting? And guess what the priority became for me? My parents. I wanted to make sure that the last days were the best days. That was my personal commitment. I basically closed my consulting business and I moved into a whole nother arena. Even though I was a psychologist, I didn't know much about dementia in the sense of what it really meant. Until you walk certain journeys, you get a good guess, but it drove me to my knees. It was a place that I came to understand. I thought I was smart. I'm telling you. I really did. But then I realized I wasn't as smart as I thought. I had to learn to deal from the heart more and less from my head. And it was that combination that made the difference for me. This was the most difficult work I had ever done. How many people who have been caregivers in the room? Wasn't it one of the toughest things you've ever done? Because it's different when you're treating someone and they're not your loved one. You still support them, you care for them, but the fact that it's your loved one, it's your mother, it's your spouse, it's your son or your daughter, is absolutely amazing. It changes your life. And if you have a family, and so when someone in the house has dementia, the whole house has dementia. People don't seem to understand that. Because at some point, mom is going to look at you and say, what's your name? Imagine being the one doing all this work, doing everything they can to take care of you, and they don't remember your name. And for some people, it's so devastating, they don't know what to do. So I decided I needed to focus on caregivers. Because a lot of people were focused on the loved one living with dementia and doing the things they needed to do to help them. But I was not doing, but no one was really focused on the caregiver. And there was some low points in this process. The low points were, how many people have a family where you, and nobody, let me ask this a different way. How many of you have wills? Just raise your hand. Who has, okay, those of you that don't have wills, how do people know how you want to be cared for? How do they know? Do you want to be placed in a nursing home? Do you want end-of-life care? Do you want to be resuscitated? You need a voice in how you are cared for, and your will, and the reason I say that, too many families don't have any documents. And now I'm the caregiver. I'm making decisions for you, and I don't have a clue what you want. If you walk away with one thing, please get your documents right. So attorneys in the room do this, say that a lot of times. Get your documents right. That way people know how to treat you and how you want to be treated. And one of the things I have come to appreciate, there's some families that have control issues. You gotta know what I mean? If you ever had an issue with a sibling, you're gonna have a huge issue when they get sick, when your loved one gets sick. Because oftentimes they're the foundation of the family. And I didn't realize one of my sisters didn't like me. I couldn't imagine why, but I found out my sister didn't like me because we got in a battle of who was going to control the care of my parents. Who's going to control it? And I said, I don't need to control it, I just want to ensure that it's done properly. People have different definitions of property. And we ended up in court, unfortunately. And you don't want to end up in court. That's a painful thing. But you know what? I grew up in a spiritual family. I grew up to believe all things are working for my good. Somewhere in this process, there's some good. And so it doesn't feel like good when you're going through it, but there's some good going on. And those of you that have cared for a loved one, one of the other low points is when your loved one starts to lose capacity and they develop what we call challenging behaviors. And I would say challenging because they're challenging for you. They're normal for your loved one. So I make sure I say the challenge is with me. Suppose I decided that and I have to mention, that you're stealing my money. You're stealing my money. I know you're stealing my money. What's the natural reaction? Come on, tell the truth.
Call the police. Call the police.
She said, you're lying, you ain't stealing your money. That's an honest spirit. Because I want you to know it will happen. And when they accuse you, one of the challenges is, I'm teaching the caregiver how to manage that. So, I've got a family we supported. The husband says the wife stole his wallet. And they go in there. You said you stole it, and I said, I didn't. As a matter of fact, I said, you don't have any money anyway. What I want is your wallet. So that's back and forth, back and forth. I said, do this the next time. Go and buy 3 wallets that look exactly the same. And the next time he loses his wallet, go and say, baby, I found your body. Again, if you learn practical strategies, you are allowed then to have reasonable experiences with your loved ones. The next thing that we did, I told them they should do, is part of the issue of dementia. Sometimes people get no connection, physical connection. I said, this is what I want you to do next time. Go over, grab his hand, and say, baby, let me help you look. The beauty of dementia, if there's any beauty, they're going to forget some. All I did was distract. So there's strategies you can put in place, and that's what we spend our time doing. Teaching caregivers about the disease, understanding the dynamics, and how to manage the disease, and how to take care of yourself. So what we did is, in the process after that, we created a nonprofit. And the nonprofit, so we went from working with our parents to then creating a nonprofit. The nonprofit is Universal Dementia Caregivers. And we offer monthly lunch and learns that are free to the community on topics that range from sexual behavior with people in Alzheimer's to legal issues and fights. So just range. And so we provide lunch and make them feel special. But then we also established a training program that's evidence-based, and we got published in the Clinical Gerontologist. So we wanted to make, you gotta be legitimate to do things, so we got it published. Then the last step is that we wrote this book, and this is just the beginning. People have allowed us into their lives and allow us to talk about what's going on for them. There's one family in the book that is 3 sisters and a mom. Mom has dementia. Now, people say 3 women in the same house and they get along. I said, yes, we can get along. So she's, and I found out how. As the women divorced, they got divorces, they all came back home. So here we have 3 women that are divorced and mom. And usually there's one caregiver that does the majority of the work. Well, update on the story, that main caregiver has dementia now. So mom and the loved one, the first caregiver, has dementia. So what they're doing now is trying to see, we need some youth in this group now. So we're looking at the family and examining the family to see who might be able to support this family. And we're going to work through that with them and support. Because I want to make sure they have the resources. And one of the complaints, and I want to at some point ask you all about this, the complaints about healthcare is they're not necessarily aware of us. They don't necessarily make us a priority. There's some of the tests that we do, they talk about some of the tests themselves aren't culturally relevant. So we've got all of this stuff out there, and how many of you are really trusting of the medical system? I mean, you're really trusting. They have your best interest at heart 90% of the time. Every time I get a call and they say, we want to examine your medication, I'm like, I'm not going. They're trying to get rid of something. It's a shame, and at this point in my life and development, I have that issue too. So I wanted to, as I said, UDC, and the book is Diane has up front, and the caregivers, and it's so special when people let you in their lives. So I appreciate them and what we're doing. What we do is, because I know my lane, I know what my gifts and talents are, and I honor the gifts and talents of other people. I partner with other people, other professionals. I need a neurologist or a gerontologist to do the assessment. Did you know that most African American families don't get the assessment? They're often told, your loved one has dementia. And you leave the office, and I said, well, what did they tell you? He has dementia. I said, but what did they tell you? What do you do next? How do you move forward? That's where we come in and help support. But we also look to specialists to ensure that some form of assessment is done, that a care plan is put together, which is inclusive of nutritionists, inclusive of a care team, so that people know what's going on. So those are the folks we work with, plus some. So let me ask you, those of you that know something about dementia, what are some warning signs you've seen? Early warning signs, what did you see? Forgetful? Yes, ma'am. Somebody else? Confusion about anything sometimes. Illogical conversations. She said illogical conversations. And I love you for saying that, because it's illogical to us. It is not illogical to them. Have you been in situations where they were just going, but they knew exactly what they were saying, but you knew it wasn't real? You have to honor what they're trying to tell you. She said her mom had snakes in the room. And how'd you, you'd have to tell me how you did that. My mother had imaginary friends. What we recommend is what she did. Let's talk about snakes. What they doing, Mom? Dad, what they doing? Want me to get them out of here for you? I had the power. I was deemed with power. When she had imaginary friends, I'd come in and say, who's with you today? Miss Johnson. I said, she nice? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, she is. I said, she can stay. I said, at the point she gets to have some problems, call me because I'm going to banish Miss Johnson from this house. Caregivers don't realize you have more power than you think because you feel so helpless. Because the issue is you're watching them change from this vibrant, alive person to someone who's totally changing in front of you. But I keep emphasizing they're still inside. And there's a spirit that still needs to be nurtured. I was talking to a pastor once and I was telling him about dementia. I said, what's your thought about spiritual dementia? And he fell out laughing. He says, you know what? There are some of my members that get some spiritual dementia. And I said, well, what you just have to do is remind them, care for them. I said, no different than what I do with the loved ones that we support. So, lost in familiar places, repetitive questioning is probably what you see first. And repetitive question, if you're really questioning, if you really don't know what it is at the clue, you can get frustrated. When I ask you, man, what time is it? And you say, 5 o'clock. 2 minutes later, what time is it? 5 o'clock. She's laughing already. I know she's going to say eventually. But unless you know what the issue is, you will be overwhelmed, you will be upset. At some point, one lady said, I just told my mother, you don't have no appointment, so it don't matter what time it is. But you got to deal with you. It's so important that you manage you. It's not about managing them. They're doing what they're supposed to do. Understanding the disease and the disease cycle makes you more comfortable in figuring out how to handle it. Okay? So, one, repetitive questions, memory loss, reduced conversation. Any other signs that you've seen? Start losing your keys. How many of you lose your keys? Does that mean you have dementia?
Not yet.
Not yet. The part of the challenge is this. If you lose your keys, part of the issue of losing your keys is you're having too many things going on at the same time. You need to slow your spirit. You need to slow down. I used to run upstairs to look for something, and by the time I got upstairs, I didn't have a clue what I was up there for. Now, I got my mom and dad had dementia. I'm like, oh, Lord, am I going to get this? I said, no, I ain't owning that spirit. No, not at all. I'm not owning it. The issue is slow down. Breathe a little bit. Give yourself some relaxation and do the things you need to do. What I tell people about their keys, if you lose your keys and you don't know how to trace it back, because don't you do this? Where was the last place I had my keys? Where was I? Let me think. Oh, I was in the car. That was the gift of memory. Some of our loved ones, they can't do that anymore. The memories are gone. The connections are gone. So that's where we get it. So getting lost in familiar places, reduced concentration, memory problems, and repetitive questioning. So remember, I focus on the caregivers. I want to make sure caregivers are healthy. And in the church, there are a lot of caregivers in a lot of different roles. And I tell preachers all the time, you're a caregiver who's taking care of you. And they say, the Lord. I say, okay, but who else is taking care of you? Who else has he put in your path to help take care of you? So that's important. So let me talk a little bit about, first of all, dementia is not normal. So I was at the table over here with some ladies, and the mom, how old was your mother? 98? Yes, ma'am. 94. Didn't have a touch of dementia. I had an aunt that was 101, and she was she's starting to transition. And this is what she said to me. She said, baby, you remember that money I gave you? This was like 5 or 6 years ago. And she's ready to die now, right? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, you can have it. I'm like, oh my God, this is great. And I said, and I had already spent it on her anyway. I said, thank you, and I appreciate you giving me that money. So dementia is not, even though age is the primary indicator of dementia, it is not necessarily the point at which you fall dead or you start developing dementia-related diseases. Dementia is not a mental illness. Dementia is not only experienced by older people. And dementia, as we said, if we're going to define it, how many of you have seen this concept? I do define dementia like this. I have a bag of M&Ms in the yellow package with the nuts. And in that bag are all kinds of different colors. So dementia is impacting my ability, my thinking ability, my cognitive ability. And it's causing for me to have memory issues. It's causing me to have mood issues. It may cause me to have physical issues. So a variety of issues are part of that symptom bag of M&Ms. But below the M&Ms, in that bag, there are multiple colors, which I call the different types of dementia. Alzheimer's being one type of dementia. The most prevalent, the one that everybody knows about, it's probably the most researched, but it's one type of dementia. So let me just ask, so the question I'm always asked, is dementia and Alzheimer's the same thing? Let me ask you, is it? No. No. My father had vascular dementia, which meant it presented in different ways. He had lots of mini strokes. Mom had, again, both had plaques, both had stoppages or blockages, but they were not the same thing. And when we come to these folks at some point and say, I need you all to articulate that even better because of the experience and knowledge of our physicians. Right now, in our community, dementia is 2 to 3 times more prevalent. It comes to us more than, but there's so many health disparities in our communities. Dementia is another one. And there are over 7 million people right now in the United States that have Alzheimer's. It's only predicted to go up higher. That's a lot of people. And thinking about 2 to 3 times in our community. And as I said before, Alzheimer's makes up 60 to 80% of all the dementias that are out there right now. Parkinson's is, well, 2 things. There is a Parkinson's dementia, but there's a Parkinson's without dementia. Yes, and again, anytime I'll look back to this group anytime you want to fill in, but my understanding is about 50% of the people who develop Parkinson's will also develop Parkinson's dementia.
Yeah, one more slide.
Okay. I'm going to shift, but then I'm going to go back to this panel and Dr. Sharon. Caregivers say that caregiving is, some of them, it's a chance to give back to the community, give back to my family, to reconnect. They also say it's a chance to have more purpose and focus. But there's also a group that says caregiving is killing me, and I didn't even have a choice in the matter. And one of the things I see with church people, they often say, the Lord gave me this job, and I got to do it, and I got to do it by myself. And I said, what, is the Lord trying to kill you too? No, the issue is it may be laid at your doorstep, but they're laying also a whole lot of other things at your doorstep.
Yes.
Other gifts, resources, and talents that can help you, because if you isolate yourself, which is the worst thing you can do for you and your loved one, it makes the disease worse, as well as it doesn't help you take care of yourself. One of the things that I have come to learn in service and caregivers in particular, you control 3 things. You control how you react to your loved one. So some people say, well, I just got mad. Come on. You walk around just getting mad all the time? You can control through self-management techniques, through breathing techniques, through utilizing music and things for yourself. Learn coping strategies. Hear me, you will still mess up sometime, but that's okay. We mess up all the time, don't we? The nice thing about forgiveness. As long as we don't hit anybody. In addition to that, you control the environment. You can determine if the environment is stimulating or not stimulating. Some people think as long as the loved one is quiet, they're fine. That's not true. They need to be engaged. They need to be talked to. They need to be stimulated. But they've got dementia. They still need to be engaged. They need to be touched. They need to be talked to. They need to be connected with you and the rest of the world. One lady called me and said, we have a family reunion coming up. Can Mama handle that family reunion? I said, tell me about your family. I don't know, I'm not there. But I said, if indeed I were to take her, and you pay attention to how she changes, if she starts to kind of withdrawing or getting agitated or demonstrating behaviors that say she's uncomfortable, you might want to move her into a room by herself. Some families have 7 conversations going on at the same time. And that's hard for them to follow that. It's hard for me to follow. But if you place them in the room and then have people come in and support her and pay attention that you're connected and loving on her, but not overwhelming her, it's important. Also put somebody there to kind of ward off what people do. As soon as someone comes in, they say, what's my name? My father once said, don't you know your own name? That's important to know that. So what you do is you put somebody there with her, and so when I come in, you say, well, this is Paula. We got that over with, well, I don't have to have that stress. Because depending on where they are, they want to know. They want to causing stress in their energy and in their spirit. So as I said, there are all kinds of ways to keep them engaged, puzzles, music, scrapbooks, all kinds of stuff that you can do that's important for you to stay connected. But here, I think it's important that you also nurture the relationship. A lot of people our age are still mad at their parents. The mean part of me says, get over it. But the kind part of me says, you need to take time and resolve that because you're never going to resolve it with them at this point. And if you find that you're angry, or every time you don't do something, you feel guilty, you've got to work through that, and they can't help you. You need to work that through yourself, through some of these talented folks here that can give you some support on resolving issues. And take care of your mind, your body, and your spirit. And I need to just ask you, tell me one thing you're doing right now to take care of your mind. Just yell it out. Crossword puzzle would say? God. God. Good ways to keep your mind engaged, keep your mind stimulated. Not only do you need to do that, you need to do that with your loved one. What about your body? What are you doing to take care of your body? Exercise, walking. I have this little image of this brain and this heart walking together with exercise stuff. So keeping your body engaged, staying connected. And what about your spirit? What are you doing to nurture your own spirit that you can wake up in the morning and say, thank you? She reads the Bible. What else? Meditate. What do you do? So what's my spirit? Oh, she stimulates your spirit. Oh, I love it.
Praise the Lord.
That's great. That's great. You read Proverbs every day. Nothing at all wrong with that. So again, the healthier you are, the healthier that you will be with your loved one. Know that they have dementia and various types of dementia. Know that the disease is progressive. It starts in one place and it moves to another. Know that at each stage they may have different symptoms, but also know every person's journey is different. You can't say, well, my father didn't cuss me out. My mother cursed me out once. She was a good church lady too, big hats and all. And one time she said to me, I ain't gonna tell you she said, it's a shame. But what happened, she cursed at me, and I laughed so hard because I'd never heard her use profanity that she started laughing. How they respond to your spirit. They respond to your energy. And if you're depressed, which is very, very common, they will also probably be depressed, and we should pay attention to that.
Call Dr. Sharon.
Well, Dr. Sharon, you going to introduce her or shall I? No, please. I met this wonderful woman you can do the other part. I met this wonderful doctor yesterday at Howard University, and we did a session together, and I was such a talent. And so I wanted to have her talk to you about dementia or whatever else, or I can ask you my number one question. There are issues, and you did such a wonderful job. There are issues in our community about trust when it comes to the healthcare system. What would you do, or advice would you give
to improve that relationship?
Want me to answer that now or on the panel? Let me think.
Now.
Well, I'll tell you, why don't you hold it from the panel? And we would love to have you introduce yourself.
Yes.
Dr. Sharon Allison.
Oh, I see many of my friends and colleagues in here. The best. But hi, I'm Dr. Sharon Allison. I'm trained in internal medicine and geriatric medicine. I do a lot of talk. We are here in DC. You hear me often on Howard's WHUR as well, doing health, relationships, sex and sexuality, whatever. And I wanted to just say, I came from my own church today. Happy Palm Sunday to those of us. And my sermon topic for my pastor was keep going no matter what.
Yeah.
So we all need in DC to be uplifted or whatever. So I'm very happy to be here. I am, a fellowship trained geriatrician. So issues of the elderly are very important, but I look at it from a practical standpoint versus not. And true to this point, one of the things I spend a lot of time doing as also a strategist and consultant is teaching doctors how to speak English, i.e. that patients can understand, and teaching patients to take ownership of their health and to be able to engage with the healthcare community and know it's their right to get their questions answered. So I look forward to being a part of the panel, and I'll answer that question.
Thank you.
And we welcome you, and we welcome everybody here on the panel. So, and Dr. Duren, you are absolutely amazing. You do not. I thank you so much for what you do for your organization as well as the wonderful work you do. So now we're going to get started with each of the other panelists, giving you just some brief background and on their understanding of dementia and the impact on caregiving. And we will start with Dr. Roger Weir.
Hi again. I listened. I learned a lot. Okay, I learned, particularly the three waters. I never heard of that. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, great. But we'll talk in terms of what I've heard. We'll talk a little bit about dementia first, and but dementia is basically so the you or I who are sort of normal will later become intellectually impaired. If the intellect is impaired all along, it is of course we call it undesirable term now, but mental retardation. You separate these people out. But the normal person goes probably through for some degree of impairment and later dementia. Again, there are great definitions out there about dementia. Probably the principal working one is that when you can no longer work or do your usual occupation or social activity. That is still not a straight line. But basically what I wanted to say, between dementia as we talk about it and the normalcy as we talk about it, there's another term, probably the most prominent one, is the mild cognitive impairment. And if you come in and you're at the stage of mild cognitive impairment, whether you came on your own or somebody brought you, if somebody wants to define where you are, it's a lot of work. So you talk about caregivers and so forth, but if you put that time in terms of possibly more than one session, you can nail it down very well. Even so, if I'm working with somebody in that circumstance, I will avoid calling them dementia unless I have to, simply because not everybody whose mind goes on, not everybody gives the correct impression. And even if it's true, there are people, relatives, who take great offense at it. And until you're ready to document what you have clearly, I'm not sort of prepared to put myself in a quarreling position. Now, the term mild cognitive impairment also is because you're coming to a stage, I would say possibly now, probably the second year, in which you say we probably have, not finally have, potent treatments which people wanted to take early. So if you have early dementia or mild cognitive impairment, they want to give you one of the newer amyloid depleting drugs. I guarantee within the next 10 years, people will be putting more effort into making that diagnosis earlier, getting better drugs, but that's where the push will be in a general sense. One other thing, aside from MCI and its diagnosis, differential diagnosis, one other term I put down as I heard you talk was the dementia with Lewy bodies. Alzheimer's is said to be a neurodegenerative disorder. It's certainly the commonest neurodegenerative disorder getting intellectual impairment. First diagnosed securely actually in 1906. But the number two neurodegenerative disorder is now dementia with Lewy bodies. But pathology first described anywhere in 1976, long time after people getting it. Groups of cases probably first described in 1984. Sedated illness, it's there. As a matter of fact, it turned up, it was thrown up because the technology improved. Big thing is several of these things. The technology improved, and the neuropathologists kept coming back to the clinical people saying, I saw so and so and so. And that was before the clinical people became aware. People still have problems diagnosing it. I listened to something carefully yesterday, and it's not in great detail. But anyway, it's out there as probably now the number two dementia. What is dementia with Lewy bodies? Dementia with Lewy bodies' closest relative is probably Parkinson's disease. There are people who call them a continuum. They talk about Alzheimer's, and they'll talk about amyloid, and we talk about Parkinson's or dementia with Lewy bodies. We'll talk about Lewy bodies. These are the abnormal tissues accumulating in the brain, which probably cause the dysfunction. But it is there. People are just starting to look for treatments. There's a long gap between starting to look for treatments and achieving a treatment. First, you hear about the treatments, which, if they work, it's very borderline. Before you get to that, you hear about many treatments which, they don't work. People claim they work. And then you come behind efficacy in treatment. Let me just say about the treatments. Sometime in the 1990s, the cholinesterase inhibitors came out, whose job is to retard the progression of Alzheimer's. They do a job. If you ask me, I will insist they do a weak job. Okay? The early 2000s, I think the Mantin came out. A different mechanism of action, somewhat similar to the impairment. Good thing about them acting together, they work better, and together they had less side effects than alone. Anyway, in the news a great deal in the last 4 or 5 years are the amyloid removal agents, okay? And, the quarrels with the FDA approving and other people and so forth. So 4 years ago, people were probably ready to, some people were ready to give up on the amyloid removal stuff. 2 years ago, it was very difficult. As I'm saying, this is probably the second year, and this is one positive. But they are people who will look to them for further improvement. I guess that's what I was trying to stop.
Thank you, Dr. Weir.
William Lawson, as I said, I've been through several careers, psychologist, psychiatrist, and recently retired. And it's been an interesting experience. When I leave here, I'm going to go through my rounds. Who are my rounds? Not my patients, my friends. And a reminder that I'm now in an age group in which the risk is high. What excellent point she hinted at is that we are at increased risk for Alzheimer's. Good news. The good news is that it's showing, I was always told it was primarily a genetic disease, but now seeing that there are other environmental factors that causes Alzheimer's, that we talked about diet and so forth, and using that thing up on top of your head, working it. I haven't seen an athlete yet that trained by lying in bed. Haven't seen one yet. So the same thing in terms of the brain. Don't slow that thing down, keep it rolling. So, but that is also a contributor to why we may be at greater risk, and why we're seeing it much more in our community. What can we do about it? Part of it is also look at the diverse roles that we have in terms of caregivers. We made the point that our caregivers are at increased risk for a number of different problems, including having diverse roles. Now, my father developed, had COPD and developed some dementing signs. So he lived in rural Virginia. Several things I had to do. So they called me up and said, Bill, you know, you're a psychiatrist. You come out of there acting weird. Can you come down here real quick? Sure. It's only 120 miles away. So I hop in the car and run right down there. I said, let me go talk to his neurologist. Neurologists did not have a clue as to what to do with behavioral problems. And that raised up the other point. We talk about Alzheimer's in terms of cognitive impairment, but the big problem in terms of why people end up in nursing homes is in terms of the behavioral disturbances. In the past, it was often, we have medications, as a friend of mine said, drugs like Halo will stop you in your tracks, but that have a slight side effect. You have Parkinson's, dementia, if you have Alzheimer's, it makes things worse. In fact, there's some contraindications. Fortunately, there are newer treatments, newer medications. I was just testified 2 weeks ago to the FDA to try to get one of these medications made more available, but they aren't in our community, and our physicians often aren't aware of it. They're too busy. They're taking care of people. They're often not able to keep it up. So that's where the caregiver not only is an advocate, but also an advocate to making sure that the providers know what's the latest, the hottest, and what's going on. Not to say, well, I saw something on TV, take it in your brain will become super, but at the same time, just encourage them to read the literature, see what's new, and see what's happening. The other point that I think is an excellent point is cognitive impairment. There's dementia. Full disclosure, I'm the immediate past president of the senior psychiatrists, which is a group right now. Our issue is in terms of ageism. And a big problem right now is that certain disorders, like some of the mental disorders, there's a hell of a lot of stigma. And so I'm working, trying to get them linked in with the neurological disease. Because if you have a neurological disease, you treat a little bit nicer. You go out there and you shoot somebody and say, you got seizures, you got epilepsy. Oh, okay, we'll let you off. But if you say you got schizophrenia, you end up locked up for life. So looking at, we know in terms of the recent evidence that we deal with the same organ, a lot of overlap in terms of neurochemical systems. And so we have to work to try to balance what's best and what works and what not works. The good news, again, is that we now have newer treatments that can deal with the behavioral problems that do not have these side effects. The bad news, they're expensive. Not the word noted. They're expensive. And they're hard to get for many of us in our community. And then some of the folks don't have cognitive impairment. What's going on? They're depressed. And all too often, I see folks put them on an antidepressant or give them talk therapy. My gosh, the dementia is cured. There's a real problem in terms of recognizing, and it's difficult behaviorally, even with some neuropsychological testing, differentiate depression, post-traumatic stress disorder. Found at Howard University, 50% of the people that went through the primary care clinic had either PTSD or depression. Depression, and there's a lot of stigma in our community, a lot of beliefs that depression doesn't exist in our community. Many people don't recognize the signs of depression. And so trying to differentiate depression, dementia, and so forth is a challenge. But yet caretakers often have to deal with it. And also, there's a book called Black Pain. I encourage you to read it as long as you read her book as well. That states the point that this was a person who was a social worker who had depression, didn't recognize it. So even the caretakers often do not recognize the depression and leads to severe impairment in terms of their ability to get things done, and are also left on the side. And unfortunately, I've seen caregivers who kill themselves because of guilt, other feelings, incompetence, so forth, because of a failure to recognize their own depression. Again, the good news is that many of these problems are treatable. Some of them are preventable. But the important thing is that, especially in our community, and if you try to read a good book about it, and I'm glad she's got her book out, trying to read a good book about it, you won't find them. We need more information in terms of our community about these issues, their problems. They're going to increase, and that's the really bad news. They're going to increase at a time when there's fewer resources to try to deal with them. So we got a challenge ahead of us.
Thank you.
Thank you again. I'm Robin Barlow, and what I do each week is teach classes on nutrition, because food, if we want to go back 2,500 years ago, Hippocrates said, "Let medicine be your food and food be your medicine." And it is no less true today as it was then. Of course, we have a lot of pharmaceuticals, and you may need pharmaceuticals, but we need to start with food, whether we're talking about risk reduction of chronic disease or risk reduction, in what's going on with the brain. And so, and I mentioned that they see some relationship between type 2 and 1 diabetes and what they refer to sometimes as type 3, though it's not a clinical term, but it is people that have high blood pressure, diabetes, are more likely to have not just dementia, but I'll say Alzheimer's. And there's a test, I guess they do assessments to come up with whether or not you have Alzheimer's. But there's some things that I've learned in doing my class and from research that has been put together by a lot of doctors, nutritionists, and other medical researchers. And so one is, well, they've done several tests. One, I'll just mention, like in University of Cincinnati, the average age was about 78. And what they did was give, and this is how food can affect your life. So someone that, the average age being 78 years of age, and for 3 months, the participants were given 1 pint of grape juice every day for 3 months. And at the end of those 3 months, they did an assessment. They gave them a test, and their memory improved. Their memory was better. And then they did it again, and this time they used, I think it was blueberry juice. Same thing. And so what they found in different tests is that the anthocyanins, resveratrol, these elements that are in the food, in the drink, they were beneficial for mild cognitive impairment, or just people doing better, remembering better, doing better. And so what we know, and one of my students or participants came up, he's from Jamaica originally, he's a medical doctor, retired, and he said, you've been talking about those blueberries, and it turns out my aunt back home was suffering from some, I say dementia, mild cognitive impairment anyway, and her doctor told her to start eating blueberries. And several months later, she says, my aunt's doing better. Okay, so that's just one thing, and I don't want to make too much of just that, but there are different stories, different studies that have been done. Another one on, they found that vitamin E is very important. And so how much should you have? About 8 milligrams a day. And you can get that from nuts, about 1 ounce of nuts or a little bit more. The point is people will just eat nuts like popcorn, right? Or like M&Ms or something like that. And it may be too much because we are balancing the good antioxidants in there against the fat that we're getting. And we need to be get low saturated fat foods is what we really want, so that we don't clog up, our arteries and what have you. So that's just good to know. Don't just eat a lot of nuts. Maybe sprinkle it on your salad. Just have it sparingly, but have some every day. That's not just nuts and seeds. Also omega-3s. Everybody should get some type of omega-3 in their system because then that balances out some of the omega-6s, which you get from a lot of different oils. And you want to make sure that you, it should be a 1 to 2, 1 to 4 relationship. And maybe we can take some omega-3 and then end up with like 24 times that on a regular basis because of the different things we're taking in. Okay, I'm going to not talk too much more. There are two things I want to emphasize. Color is so important. Polyphenols, we talked about, here's something called, just to show you briefly, this is called the nutrition rainbow. It's got the colors of the rainbow. The colors of the foods we eat, they come from the ground, we should be eating those foods. Whether they come from a tree or ground, we need them. And each one of those colors is an antioxidant. This is going to help the caregiver and the patient. They should be eating the same because it's going to help you later on down the road. So this will tell you all the different possible substances that are in your food that act as antioxidants. And so the other thing that is so important, well, reducing saturated fat, but the other thing that is so important, to me, most important, is the fiber. And if you're eating the natural foods, the foods that come out of the ground, off the trees, what have you, they all come with fiber. And if they don't have fiber in it, you did something to it. And the fiber helps with, when we say there's a relationship between, diabetes and what have you, the blood sugar, eating fiber slows that down, slows the way that the sugar comes at you, and also it's added sugar and processed foods that are killing us. It's like our body knows what to do with natural things. God made a pretty perfect body, but we add to it all of these processed things, and the body doesn't know, well, when do you stop? What will I do? And I'll say, if you are eating, there are two types of iron. I want to say so much, but I'm not going to say. Just remember there's hem iron and there's non-hem iron. One can damage your kidneys and really mess you up, and the other way, you will never get too much because your body can handle natural foods. It doesn't know what to do when you have processed it and done all sorts of things with it. So anyway, there's a lot to say about that, but the brain will certainly be helped by eating, these whole foods. And the ApoE allele 4, allele, that's a long term, but it is, that's a gene that shows that you do have a propensity. The gene that you have is Alzheimer's gene. You're getting it genetically. However, they also show that through these studies that if you eat the right foods and you exercise, walks 3 times a week, start with 5 minutes and go up to 40. You do that, you eat mostly plant-based foods, you can reduce that amount. You can reduce your risk factor by maybe 80%.
Thank you very much. And now we're going to hear from, and I'm so glad you're with us because you are a gerontologist, and that is a specialty that oftentimes we don't hear about, but certainly at this stage of life, we can definitely use your expertise. So,
Thank you. So I will just start by saying great panel, and one of my heroes and one of the greatest psychiatrists ever, Dr. Lawson. Again, I wanted to just thank you all for having me. So number one, from a geriatric standpoint, and I'm sure everyone will agree, the moment you diagnose a patient with dementia, you have 2 patients. One is the patient in front of you that has the diagnosis, 2 is the family. and the caregiving team. And so we have to address the health and wellness of both. Why? Because if the caregiver gets sick, who's taking care of mom? And has things kind of spiral out of control, which they will, because it's chronic disease, right? We have to make sure that there is a safety net. So with that, we're also addressing mind, body, and spirit. If mom has always loved to go to church and you don't want to bring her to church because she may embarrass you, well, you're now hurting her spirit, right? And the fact is, mom going to a reunion, actually, she may have better long-term memory than you do, because long-term has been preserved. And so you really do have to make sure that we balance this out and that you give caregivers permission. Somebody say permission. Permission to mess up, right? There is no perfect way. There's nothing perfect. Certainly we're not talking about elder abuse. I agree with ageism is a major issue as it relates to all of medicine. And so you have two patients in front of you, one the patient with dementia, the other panelists have talked about some of the advances in dementia care, and the family is dementia. The offspring are Alzheimer's, which is the largest group. We talked about Weir-Board, we should talk about frontotemporal and all of that, the other members of the family. Get a good diagnosis, all right? And as Black people, I say all the time, number one, let's talk about vascular dementia. And let's talk about prevention of vascular dementia in your 30s, in your 40s, in your 50s, because that blood pressure pill that you failed to take before coming to church today because you didn't want to go to the bathroom, and now you're going to forget tonight because you're going to take the Sunday nap, means that the blood pressure is up, right? And then you may have little micro strokes. Well, the stroke doesn't take you out. You don't have loss of a limb. It is that it builds on and knocks out memory cells. So we need to talk about dementia prevention. And as I talk about prevention, the nutritionist talked about nutrition, 5 fresh fruits and vegetables every single day. An apple is 2 servings. So 5 servings of 5 fresh fruits and vegetables. If a parent or loved one has dementia, you need to also be protecting yourself. Exercise, which you talked about. But that doesn't mean, I was at an event last night, that doesn't mean that I have to go on my Peloton for 30 minutes. I can do that fan dance foolishness that I can't do, right? And try to do it for 20 minutes a day. Let's make it fun. And then for socialization, you are caring for your parent with dementia, right? Or a loved one with dementia. Get up and dance with them, right? They will love that. Put on Sam Cooke. Right? I love Sam. Right? Do those things which will, now you're hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. Socialization, something fun, and something other than them sitting there eating tapioca. Right? Nobody wants to do that. So now, as we talk about, I'm dealing with the patient, we're talking about the caregiver, you being broke down does not help anybody. So you keep your appointment. You keep your mental health professional on speed dial. Everybody needs somebody to talk to that you don't have any my girlfriends are wonderful. But when I was going through major grief over the loss of my life, I needed a professional, right? Just like we need a professional for heart. But that's a whole nother talk about mental health in the African American community and how we've lost our mind and need to go find it with somebody to guide us. So when we talk about also prevention for the caregiver, take care of yourself, exercise, diet, all of those things. There's nothing good that ever came out of a tobacco stick or the other things that people smoke, right? And so no smoking, and limit your amount of alcohol to no more than 6 ounces every few days, not every single day. These are good standards of care for everybody, no matter what we're talking about. And as Dr. Lawson was saying, let's make sure that we're keeping the mind active. My mother is 84 years old. One of the things that she gets with every Mother's Day, we already bought 2 books, crossword puzzles. She will get that. There is a standard of who is calling mom today, who's challenging her today on what she's going to do. My mother doesn't have dementia. We don't want her to have dementia, but my mother can be depressed because she's in her house and all her friends are dying. If our elderly folks are just going to funerals, heck, I'd be depressed too, right? My best friends are dying and all of that. And then now you think that's dementia. It's not. It is depression. It is reaction to the fact that my days are shorter. So then finally, from my standpoint as a geriatrician, we talked about the patient. Understand that the world will not come to an end because Mama Susie does not know that this is April, right? The date is the 11th or the 12th. Half the time I don't know, right? The world will not come to an end if my mother or a loved one calls me Denise and not Sharon, or calls me something else. Stop trying to make their memory cells come back and enjoy the final days and the journey. And then the last thing I want to say, part of geriatrics is the essence of living well. No matter if it's another day or another year or 10 years, but making sure that there is dignity for the patient with dementia, dignity for the patient as we now transition, and talk early about what happens, Mom, if you have a major issue. What happens? How do you want to end your life? How do you want to spend your last days? How do you want us to handle if you have to go on a ventilator or we have to make end-of-life decisions? That will keep a bunch of you all, and my family as well, from fighting about, well, I think she wants this, I think she wants this, etc. So let's plan for the end of our lives. We spend so much money, time, and energy on trying to stay healthy, which we should, trying to live our life, make our ends meet, but we also have to make a plan, and that doesn't mean buy an insurance policy. That means open your mouth, open your pen, and tell your family, this is how I want to live. My dad, I'll end like this. Most important person in my life was my father, who, God rest his soul, passed, and I was his primary health care power of attorney and all that. And I said to Dad after his second heart attack, and I knew we were facing some big challenges, Daddy, well, if you get sick again, I'm gonna have to put you on a ventilator more than likely, blah, blah, blah. Tell me how you want this to play out. And he said, well, he said, first take care of your mama. Number one, first take care of your mama. And two, they gave Jesus 3 days. Don't keep me around a long time. I'm serious, he said that. And he said he had 3 days and then he got up. He said, in 3 days, reassess where I am and you make the decision. My new upcoming book that has taken 5 years to finish is You Make the Decision. The last words my father taught to me, because when I got on a plane from Maryland to North Carolina, rushing into the ICU, I lied and said that I was 5 minutes away when I wasn't even on the flight. But I didn't want them to intubate him before I got there. And I ran in and I said to him, gasping for air, Daddy, we are now at this point. I'm going to have to put you on a ventilator. I said, what do you want me to do? He said, you make the decision. And sure enough, that has freed me from guilt of making the decision a week later to terminate life support, because it wasn't that Sharon decided, it's that he decided. So you decide how to live your life, but you also decide how we go meet our maker.
And I just want to share my very recent personal experience, thanks to everybody here. Because one of the things that is so important is that people understand and are educated. I'm kind of the secondary level of caregiver. I, did not have to take care of a parent who had dementia. However, I have had several cousins. Now, I just lost my dear aunt who had dementia. Her husband, and it's very interesting because of the parallels which we were saying, Dr. Alice and Audrey, had depression. And I think folks assumed that he had dementia too. Because he became depressed because he felt helpless. He could not be the Uncle John we all knew, who was everybody's go-to, who was, everybody's. So when he saw that his wife, he even lied to the doctor. When he went for his doctor's visit in front of my cousin, who was able to report on it. So that is the other reason too. The other thing, it is so important that people go to appointments with your loved ones. But in any case, he told the doctor said, how's your wife doing? He said, oh, she's fine. And my cousin said, no, she's not. She's, she has dementia. And so, but Uncle John never accepted it. And so, and then here's the other thing. As a secondary level, as a loving cousin and niece, one of the things that hit me and a friend of mine is that, hey, wait a minute. Calvin and Faye, their children, the children of Uncle John and Aunt Gloria, they're worn out. The caregiving is so draining for them that it's hard for them to be creative. So it hit us, and I remember how much Uncle John and Aunt Gloria, when somebody mentioned Sam Cooke, I was like, yep, that was one of their favorite artists. So my friend said, why don't you, when next time we visit them, let's take some music to them. Sure enough, we used the technology. We pulled up YouTube on the big screen TV. We pulled up screenshots of Sam Cooke and other artists that they enjoyed. And the next thing you know, we had a dance party going on.
That's great. That's great.
And Aunt Gloria died a few months ago, but Uncle John still remembers to this day. He said, I got up and danced. He hadn't danced in. This was the man who was too depressed to get out of the chair. He was watching CNN 24/7. And so I just say, for those of you who do not have the direct responsibility, but who know someone, I have a neighbor who has dementia, who's related to somebody who's caring for someone. Give them the opportunity, step in where you can. And it could be in a very small way. Just that small way brought so much pleasure to them. So I'm just, kind of reiterating what I'm hearing here. So now we want to open this up to questions and answers. So, yes, I see a question back there. Art? What we got?
Age of memory, prevention, focus, and the like. What's your opinion of this?
Okay, if I understood the question, Art, you're asking about the medications that are on the market now? Yes, and I know we do see the ones that are advertised, like Prevagen. The physicians, can you all talk about those, and are they safe or are they effective?
Prevagen is probably safe, but it doesn't work for dementia. The studies that they did were all open trial studies. That means they didn't have one claim they had control group. I went back and reviewed the literature now. And basically what they showed was, as you use Prevagen, you can use sugar water, you get the same results. You will find some improvement in terms of your cognitive impairment if you do that. Now, again, the controlling term, because Prevagen is super number kind by the FDA, the controlling term is, does it help dementia or does it help cognitive impairment? We're involved in a study right now which we're using we're using various kinds of variants of pepper, and may have some benefit in terms of cognitive impairment. We're not saying that it has dementia. So again, the operating term is, are they saying that it's improving cognitive impairment? And then you need to look at it in terms of circumstances. It may not be the medication, circumstances, give them some attention, give them study, and so forth. Or are they actually saying that that we have evidence that's improving dementia and the FDA concurred with our decision?
Nothing specific to add. Nothing specific to add to it. You did mention the business of when you do a trial, having control. But if you don't have control for any method, any the people say help to make sure, there's a good chance of disability. That's all. There are big effects. As a matter of fact, in here, people run these big trials. You have the 500 people with treated drug, 500 people with placebo. The reason we do that is simply because I've been asked that sort of question. I've never really read any literature on it. I probably will at some point in time, but the claims are out there. The question is, what evidence, what strong evidence is there for it, or what support of evidence?
Yeah, you have a question here.
Yeah, I just want to ask a question. Grandma goes to surgery, and then somebody comes and says, "Oh, grandma is not the same after surgery." There's a lot of cognitive disorder after anesthesia. Now, does that progress to? Does that get worse, or does it get any better? Secondly, we're talking about older people. I've seen 50-year-old people who are demented and runs in the family. And thirdly, in England, there's something called respite care for the
Right,
caregiver.
that's right.
I don't know if we have to know.
Yes, we do get the money.
Thank you, that's it. Dr. Booker now.
This is Dr. Booker, anesthesiologist. Now, can you address, we got 3 questions on it.
Yeah. Does that cognitive disorder from anesthesia progress, or does it?
In general, no. So, you expect people to be unwell after anesthesia. You expect them to be unwell possibly after any number of sedative drugs, but that's a short period of time. So you want some good observations before you make conclusions.
Yeah, the problem. It depends on the individual. Yeah, it depends on the individual. Some people do it right away. Some people, they go for a couple of days, even months. And it depends on the drugs. The anticholinergic drugs, we know, impair memory. I mean, we work into the system. The acetylcholine is what's involved in terms of memory and storage. But the other drug that folks have a lot of problems with when they continue to use after the surgery are the benzodiazepines. What are the benzodiazepines? Well, you know what they are: Valium, Xanax, and so forth. We know that these agents cause memory problems, and that's their benefit. They make you forget about the surgery, so you feel good. But people continue to use them, go home, take it easy, can't figure out why they can't remember what day of the week it is or what they watched on TV. It's not because they got early dementia. It's because they're using a drug that we know one of its side effects is that it impairs memory. And I spent many of our mental health clinics no longer provide benzodiazepines. The rationale they give is that it may get people addicted. Not the problem with addiction. These drugs do impair memory and everyday functioning, even though they're very beneficial. They'll get rid of that panic attack. They'll get rid of that anxiety. They'll make the world seem like a bright place. But it's at a price. And that's the important thing to remember. I haven't found the perfect drug yet. I'm looking for it, but I haven't found it yet. And it's important to make sure that you talk to your provider and recognize what the side effects are. I don't go around driving a lot if I've been on a benzodiazepine. They tell you don't do it. People do it anyway, but they tell you don't do it.
To quickly piggyback off of this, number one, grandma goes to surgery, has all of the sedation and all of that. Yes, you expect a washout period, etc. You know that better than us because you're the anesthesiologist. But also, is this unmasking something because now she's in a controlled environment, eyes are on her, and she was before in a house by herself, and you just kind of checked in, but now family is there all the time, and they start to see her in a different light. The other issue is that we now, I get it all the time with my family. Grandma goes in, she had surgery, she's now in physical rehab and all that, and she's just been off the whole time. Well, light, dark cycles, sundown, those kind of things also will impact you. Just a 40-year-old, 35 for me, 50-year-old in the church. But, that will impact you. You will be off. So we also have to make sure that we don't have bias. Because sometimes we looking around the corner, well, is she really all there? Is she not? Or whatever. So I think you have to, and I agree with the panel, a geriatrician actually takes away meds. A geriatrician, a geriatric assessment, if you're able to get your family into this, a 3 to 4 hour visit, head to toe, right? A good geriatrician takes away, because we know the interactions of meds and the outcome has you start adding things on and multiple doctors. But again, no, that anesthesia is supposed to wear off and it does not cause dementia, but it can, in that environment, unmask what you didn't see because you only see it once a month.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually wanted to ask about the protocol for diagnosing dementias when they occur, because people, I think as you alluded to, Dr. Alisade, a lot of times people assume that just because somebody's a certain age or in their, age, and because of what they're seeing, that's what it is, but not necessarily. And we also want to know exactly how it occurred. That's the other thing I think that's so illuminating, is that there are so many sources of dementia, strokes. I have a friend my age who had a head trauma as a result of a car accident a few years ago, and now she has dementia. So it's pretty clear that that's what precipitated it. Could you speak to what is the official diagnosis? And Dr. Lawson-MD, thank you very much, because I think we need to make sure our loved ones see a gerontologist or a geriatric specialist. Go ahead.
The patient can come in with complaints. You basically should take a history. There are some things which are well-known as problems. You need a physical examination. There are tests we often do, imaging tests, blood tests, medication inventory, consideration of depression as you evaluate the patient. You can do short evaluations and come up with good information. You may need a longer time. They should be there, at least in your office area, with somebody that you deal with it often. But the evaluation includes a simple medication inventory. There are medicines which often do it, and there are medicines which give these problems very occasionally, and that can be very difficult.
Okay, thank you. I see a couple of questions here.
Yes. Thank you very much for this program, for putting this together. I am, along with Mr. Yarborough, we're a community advisory board that's been put together to work on the project around dementia and Alzheimer's at Howard University under Dr. Obisa. So one of the things, and I see we have a good collection up here of expertise, but one thing is missing, and maybe I didn't catch your last name, so please forgive me. Dr. Adi, and Dr. Duren, to capture the aspect of young people, families, and what it takes. I think we need to redefine caretakers and caregivers, because they can start young. Okay, when immigrant family and the older members speak Spanish or another language, and the younger members speak English, they're caretakers, they're caregivers. They're the ones who have to go to the hospital, okay, to help with the diagnosis. They're the ones who take care of the family, really, and that pressure that is placed on them at that age. College kids and young people in their 30s and 40s who have to literally almost have to drop out of school or go part-time because they have to take care of their parents. So there's a whole nother level out there in the world of caregivers and caretakers who have to draw back their ambition, what they want to do in the future, to come back home and take care of their parents. So if you can help educate the audience around that issue, because that's a missed issue. That's where you have families where that anger comes from. When you were claiming to be the next president of the United States, and you can't even run for ANC because you got to take care of your parents. So if you can address that.
I'll just touch on the part of it before we leave up. But something there is, if you have somebody who's not English speaking, and they're there often with a younger person or another person, but they may be there without an interpreter. Even if they are there with an interpreter, it is hard to get a skilled, detailed evaluation in terms of whether you could say this patient should be called dementia, should be called mild cognitive impairment, should be called normal. It's difficult to do. It's difficult to do outright, and there are multiple languages we're talking about. The two biggest ones I've dealt with have been really English and Ethiopian. But people are from other languages, and it's actually also difficult to access a skilled person, psychologist, otherwise, or psychiatrist, a skilled person who's facile in those languages. The problem if you have, in terms of having problems with younger people, I'm not that familiar with it. I'm happy to pass it.
Just want to note that Dr. Lima in the Department of Psychiatry is working with a very similar program. Also, Dr. Campbell and Dr. Harrell over in the Department of Psychology have been addressing those issues. Part of the resource issue, the heavy work demands, and how in terms of keeping those programs going. Just hired psychologists, hired a neuropsychologist. I don't know if you talked to her or not, who just literally arrived last month. Was supposed to be setting up a program, and also as part of that
Psychiatry.
In psychology.
Psychology.
Right. And also there's a program and there's a group at George Washington who just brought in several people to work at the new hospital Ward 7 that and part of their effort is going to be expanding community involvement. And part of the issue is not only getting this, I keep hearing people say that people aren't aware of these programs. I think what's important is there's a misallocation of resources. And that's another whole discussion in terms of the fact of the matter is DC spends actually a lot more money than that. I think there was a hint earlier in terms of what's going on in some of the third world countries, in terms of whether or not money is going towards family and community engagement. The U.S. just don't do it. It's not very compensated very well at all. But there are plans to try to change that using some of us are using programs such as telemedicine, and also we're training non-professionals to provide basic services, which can also play an important role in caretaking. So it's been very well using barbershop personnel in terms of using people for beauty parlors. I don't know if there's a program in DC. I know there's a big one in Baltimore. I don't know if Dr. Odie may be aware of some of these programs. But again, I think there's an awareness, but yet it's going to, the implication has been in being able to do it and also ensure that the programs get properly compensated for it because of the way in which our healthcare system is set up.
I was going to say, I think we are paying more attention, but we need to continue to pay even more. So it's important for me that I heard you talk about research that you all are doing right now, because the age is getting younger and the pressure is getting worse. And we have to wonder about their mental stability in the long run if we don't start finding ways to support them. I've seen communities do programming that rally around those families. And because I think community groups offer a lot of support that no one else can support, because they understand the environment, they understand the issues, they have the language skills, and all those things together. I think we're starting to pay more attention, and it's just one of those many issues that we're gonna have to struggle with as we move forward.
Right.
Did you want to speak about your book? Is it being sold or signed or anything? Because
I
we're
can
going to
do
be
it.
leaving very shortly, so whatever you need to do.
Okay, I wouldn't plan, can we take the question first? Yeah, I was gonna say, let's honor the question.
Sure.
I have a comment and a question, Mr. Bridgewater and my husband Dave Yarborough. He did mention in the program that they're working with, they're trying to engage musicians who have dementia or Alzheimer's and create like an orchestra, because lots of times those people respond to music, just like you said, they very much do, and you would be surprised that some of them can still play their instruments. But my question for you, Dr. Oti, is how do you get a geriatric workup, and do insurance companies cover that? And what benchmarks would need to happen in order for that to happen?
I don't really, can y'all hear me in the back? Oh, okay. So number one is called a geriatric assessment, right? A lot of university centers or geriatric centers, like there's several in Baltimore, there's one actually here at GW, it's called the geriatric assessment. And it may be a 2-part visit, and that is head to toe, but you need to prepare as a family with all the medication. They will tell you head to toe what you need to bring. The business of geriatrics, and I learned this in fellowship, we're first on the ground to make sure that there's a social worker, there's a nurse. You usually have a PA on the team as well as the physician. The physician may be the quarterback, but you understand that it is integrated care. That was 20 years ago in fellowship. And so number one, yes, Medicare will cover a geriatric assessment. It will cover a geriatric assessment because all you're going to do is code the patient for hypertension, for dementia, for all of those areas, and medication review. There's usually a pharmacist on board. And so right now, at the top of my head, Union Memorial, which is where I trained in fellowship, has an excellent program. I actually referred someone that was a good friend in DC to one of the affiliated programs of MedStar they had to, now the family took them, in this case, to Maryland, to Baltimore for that assessment. And they work in conjunction, so you don't give up your internist or your family physician. You are working in conjunction with a person that specializes in geriatrics. So that's the answer to that, and it is be prepared for a long visit, a comprehensive visit to make sure, the field of geriatrics is to make sure that you age in the best possible healthy way that you can, and that if you're at the end of life, that you transition in the best possible way. And then the last thing I want to say is basic workup. There is not one route to a diagnosis of dementia, but basic workup, apple, table, penny. Everybody say that, apple, table, penny. Okay, so number one, you may want to get a nutritional assessment. You may want to make sure you know what your blood pressure is, a medication assessment. They may want to give you a mental state exam, which is a 20-point question, or have you draw a clock. What did I just ask y'all to say?
Apple, table, penny.
Okay, if now you have advanced dementia, you would say, well, moderate would be apple. I don't know, it was something else. What did you say? That would be it. If you have advanced dementia, you would adamantly say orange, potato, and toenail. That's what you said, you forgot, right? So simple questions, simple things are from, and then there is executive function, which is the ability for you to not only know this is my keys, but this key goes in this door. That is another level. So that's basic assessment. an internist, family physician, anybody can do that in the world of medicine, certainly psychiatrists and neurologists, and then you hand it off. You may need a neurologist, you may need a psychiatrist, you need a medical team.
Thank you so much.
Let me just add to that. Unfortunately, because of our fragmented system, you can often not get these. For instance, DC, for some reason, does not pay for psychologists. On the other hand, Maryland does. I frequently, Texas is the worst in the country, and I get a lot of referrals. I do a lot of telemedicine, telepsychiatry for Texas because they can't get those kinds of services there. So we still live in a very fragmented system, despite the fact that she knows very clearly that these problems need multidisciplinary, multiple systems assessments. And I'm still dealing with a situation which a young person was deaf and was diagnosed as being demented, and that's still happening far too often. So again, some basic, we're pretty good down with Obamacare and expanded Medicare to address that, but it still goes on, and it won't change unless folks are here step up and do something about it.
Absolutely, and I realize we're at time, everybody, but before you leave, I want us, first of all, to thank this wonderful panel of experts who have given us so much and before we leave, we have a special treat. I'm going to bring up another Diane. This is Dr. Duren's publicist for the book. Would you let people know what they're in store for?
Good afternoon, everyone. Listen, no one should leave here without a book. Thanks to the National Medical Association and Dr. Baguette, we have a free book for everyone that's here today. If you buy one, you're going to get two. If you buy two, you're going to get four. My daughter's in the back, Lorraine, wave at them, show them the book. She's got a QR code. The only thing you need to do is register. If you are registered, you are walking away today with a book, but don't just take one. Buy one for $20 and bless somebody else. So leave today with at least two books, okay? And I think Dr. Paula has gifts for folks.
I have a gift for you of our book, and I wanted to say thank you for being part of this wonderful conversation and being part of I enjoyed meeting all of you.
I get another one.
So my gift.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll get my card.
Please allow, and Dr. Baguette, would you like to say a few last words as we close out?
I want to thank moderator for a job well done. Thank you, Diane. So thank you all for being here. Peace, blessing, and abundant love to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm going to get a couple of some of our graduating.
Oh, wonderful.
But I was at
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Have you ever spoken to the Association of Black?
No, I have not.
I'll let them know.
I'm gonna bring you my card.
Okay. But, you know,
Yeah, I'm gonna grab my card.
you can find it with that.
Yes.
Well, I mean,